the usual, we have the Q&A section. So you know how it works. I'm going to make it pop up right now with a funny question, with a dummy question. And you should see it coming up onto your screen saying, yep. And if you see it, give a thumbs up. So the idea is that throughout the class, you will post questions you have. And at the end, Cornelio will answer them. So by giving a thumbs up, he'll know which one's the most popular and therefore prioritize them. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us, each of you. And thank you, Cornelio, for sharing your knowledge with us. And we're really excited to hear this.
Thank you for offering the space here. I hope everyone will enjoy it. I'm sharing my screen right now. Yes. I think everyone sees my screen. Yes, my name is Cornel Fatulescu. I'm Chief Platform Officer at Pentalog, meaning I'm in charge with products and technology aspects of our group. We are 1,500 people in the group, essentially offering teams. And we were acquired recently, 3 months ago, by Globant. So we switched to 30,000 people, lots of new things going on. If everyone is interested, don't hesitate to go to our site, globant.com, and learn about us. I'm going to focus now on our topic, technical debt. So before going into this story, because I prepared a story, I'd like to know who I have here in the audience. So if you can, I'm not collecting your names or things like this. If you can open this survey, I'll show you in real time how results come in. Okay. Six results. 8. We are 24 here. We're waiting. This helps me a bit, maybe in calibrating the pitch along the way. 16, 17. I'll show that already. So most of us here are CTOs, founder, chief product officer, chief technology product officer, CIO, and other. Okay. And in terms of company size, number of people, so 5 to 30 companies, 5 to 100, 5 to 500, and 1 company to 1,000. Okay, good. So that was the first question, and I have a second one, and then I'm done. Huh? I'm going to start with the session. This is something that obsessed us for a while. If you can help us with an answer there, it should explain why we are doing this. So I'll also show you the results I had from many other sessions. $17, okay. Let's look at it like this. So many or most of you didn't took over the work of someone else. An important majority put I disagree and I agree, a minority. Okay, okay. And one I strongly agree. Okay, let me show you what I had. So when we collect this data from many sources, it looks like this. So most of the people strongly disagree and disagree about what they take over from previous roles. And this was a very important question for us. So we had to address this from many perspectives. Again, we are offering teams for CTOs and CIOs, and CTOs leave, new one comes, and we are still in between. So we wanted to help these people do a better job, have a better legacy. That was on very fast forward, this is why we had to develop such tools, methods, and much more. Now, during the session, I will not talk about all that, but it's important. This is just one episode, I'd say, among many others in a series. Okay, then. There will be a Q&A session in the end. Usually running the show is 35 minutes, and you will get the materials afterwards. You know to use the Q&A module. I'm starting the session. I usually use a character called Bob. Bob is a CTO, and he is also trying to solve many of the key questions that CTOs have. Now, today he has Jane in his team. She's a senior programmer. She's a very open person. She's trying to help. She discussed with the CFO, Mark, and Mark says, look, I'm always doing this with Excel. Can you find me a way to I don't know, do it more dynamic without me doing all this manual work all the time? And Jane is helping him, and she's doing some crazy stuff in Excel. It's not her job. She's doing much more, but she tries to help, and she's doing something pretty amazing for the CFO in Excel. The Excel connects to the platform and gets data through an API so that the CFO gets his dashboards in a dynamic way. Everyone is happy until the product owner finds out. So the product owner knows there is a legacy API. Now Jane used that legacy API. She's willing to close that API to move forward on something very different. They have limited resources. They cannot afford having all these versions in the same time. So she's a bit upset about what happened. She stops the legacy API, Excel stops functioning, and there's a conflict. Now, this is intriguing for Bob because he feels like Jane did a good job. He wants all the users, external, internal, to be happy, like the CFO, among others. And he's trying to understand if, in a sense, he's careful of technical debt, but from a very code perspective, he's sharing information about it. But he feels like this should be somehow in the technical debt, but he never thought to include third-party users of his product in the impact of these changes. So this is interesting for him to think of. Now he's putting the situation on paper, said, I had a legacy API, now I have a new API, a new API. We don't have embedded analytics. The product doesn't have the features for now because it's a fairly new product. We focused on the external users. And there is some sort of automation around in the company that touches the product, but he's not aware of. For those who attended to, I don't know if you were familiar with these episodes, Bob was going very often to his coach. Now the coach doesn't really know how to help, but one key question from the coach is, why is this important? Why taking the exercise from Jane and looking at it from a technical debt perspective? What's going to change for you? And now Bob doesn't really know, but he feels like he's missing something very important. His way to engage in conversation which are complex, technical, with non-technical people was technical debt. He also feels like things are not all in his control. So this is somehow he feels like they are pretty related. Let's see how they will relate later. So again, Bob was looking at technical debt only from software perspective, only from his code. But he also feels like it's his responsibility to look beyond that. And he's going to a session. It's called CTO blind spots. And in this session, CTO blind spots, there is a study about CTOs and CIOs. And most of the companies that have CTOs, they don't have a CIO. And many companies that have a CIO, they don't necessarily have a CTO. But they are pretty different species of roles. One is outward looking, and the other one is mostly inwards looking. The CIO is much more focused, for example, on enterprise architecture, while the CTO can mind about it, but from the data we have, most of the CTOs focus on the product and the tech around it, not necessarily on the entire information system, which is not necessarily how it should be, it's just how things are. This data is corroborated with many data points, including audits for technology, for due diligence, ongoing projects, and things like that. So this is interesting. So CTOs look different to their information system than CIOs. And he feels like himself, enterprise architecture, it's not something that he minds a lot about it. So getting back to his information system and his product, he's looking at things, how they are handled in the company, and he can already state that. The company his team developed a customer relationship management module in the product. At the same time, the Salesforce team uses a CRM, and they don't really want to go to the product. They use the product, and now he has to manage data pipelines and ensure the data is synchronized between the two. While the CRM used, it's pretty modern, API enabled. That could be his own microservice for that. He didn't think about it, just because he's looking now at the entire enterprise architecture. He's also thinking that there are many things in terms of the architecture that is missing, and many features that overlap with products that others get in the company. From these regards, he's looking at he's taking some tools, he's scanning the system, he's also finding lots of system he wasn't aware. So because he doesn't have the reflexes of a CIO until now. So he finds systems he wasn't aware of. So it's even more interesting for him to see how much of control does he have over his IT, and how this will evolve to the technical debt. Now, he knows there are many things he didn't look at before. He's getting back to things he was looking at. Technical debt, in a sense, was covered by what we find here. Very software driven. So architectural cohesion, complexity, modularization, this stuff. There are lots of tools. Basically, static code analysis. He's using all that in continuous integration, continuous deploy. He also have dynamic analysis and all that. So a bunch of tooling there. And he's doing quite good there. That's not the place where he will improve directly. But he really thinks that that's a very small part of his information system. This is the first thing that's changing for Bob. He's even wondering if technical debt is still a relevant metaphor for him to use, because there are many things that he relates to, but it's not his team doing them. He said, okay, I need to start from scratch. I'm going to get, why are we talking about technical debt? Why me as a CTO, I'm using it as a metaphor. It seems interesting because I can have very interesting conversations with my leadership team, my executive team, with the CFO, with the executive officer. So Bob is not the person who's going to stop at the first video, first book. He's reading, he's digesting lots of information and to make sense of it. So he still finds the metaphor interesting because it enables him to have great conversations with the board. But he lands on a podcast, and Michael Feathers, I don't know if you're familiar with him. It's a great author. So many books are very popular in terms of testing, code quality come from him. And he says something very interesting. So here is with bold. It's always relevant for future decisions. So in a sense, it's giving a very interesting highlight for Bob. It says, Bob, you shouldn't talk about technical debt if you're not talking about the future. If you say, I'm building this and we want to achieve this set of features and we did it wrong, that's not technical debt. That's something else. We're going to talk later about it. You talk about technical debt only when you add new use cases, like you had a solution to build for a specific set of use cases, and because you learn from your users, because it's an open system, people say, let's do new use cases, and your solution doesn't work. That gap, it's technical debt. So it's a very interesting metaphor for him to start consolidating it. If he's doing that with the code, if he's doing that by buying a product, if he's with a SaaS solution that he's going to embed in the system or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is there is a solution for use cases, and new use cases come, and we need to evolve that solution. And that's the technical debt. There is something very interesting about it, because if you think about the future, you cannot foresee all the possible scenarios, and you always have a big constraint. Now, for those who don't manage well technical debt, there is a strong correlation with lack of visibility over total cost of ownership. So total cost of ownership means all the estimates in terms of cost that we have when we build a solution, like how to build it, how much it will cost, to run it, to maintain it, to train people, whatever cost we have, doesn't matter. And we do that on 3-5 years. And this is usually your typical information when you go to a technical due diligence you're going to be asked for. So it's very important for you to know that those who don't do technical debt usually don't have total cost of ownership, and the other way around. And then he takes all this information. He says, I kind of got some structure. I have this new insight from Michael Feathers. I know I should integrate enterprise architecture in the technical debt. I don't know how yet, but it's interesting. So I'm going to make more progress around it. So what are the references? We've talked about Steve, Michael, he goes to Tom, but the list is larger. So this is for you. This is his roadmap to find more. Remember to put your questions in the Q&A module. I'm going to accelerate a bit. So he lands on these classics where we insist a lot about technical debt being a lot about risk management and opportunities. If we link that with solution architecture and what Michael Feathers did, that makes a lot of sense. But it's also interesting because it says that technical debt has an impact on the organizational culture. And this is a very profound aspect because it goes into questions how to prioritize. When I learn something, when I accumulate to technical debt, how am I managing it? How my organization will digest all that? And also to questions like, do we also have organizational debt? So he still tries to struggle. He struggles on how to structure all this together because he learned a lot, but he doesn't know how to apply it. So how to apply it? He finds this very interesting book, Software Design X-Rays. And in this book, there are some very interesting chapters about technical debt, and the fact that there's always they scan lots of repositories, and there are always some areas where there is much more change than others. So in a sense, that can help him prioritize. Why focusing on everything if most of the changes are in some areas, right? So technical debt, it's interesting. It's about the future. It's not just about the code, but it's also maybe not relevant for you to look at things which might seem technical debt, but they are not valuable because you don't do lots of changes around there. So you shouldn't mind. So that's a very interesting insight for him, not necessarily just for the code, but for the entire information system. He's wrapping everything up. And now he knows where to invest, and he's looking at it from a very systemic perspective. He has change frequency. He knows this about the future. He knows it needs to be holistic, and so forth. He also finds that there are lots of tools that can show relationships in terms of social structures of those who contribute to code. Of course, this doesn't include software as a service or things like this, but this is also something that he is getting useful for him, because he cannot think now about technical debt without thinking about the social structure of those who change, those who are impacted by the changes. And this is very interesting. Why? Because there are some laws in technology. And we know we should never talk about technology without social structures. In a sense, there are people who contribute to the technology, who build it. There are people who link the dots, and there are always organizational structure. And even the best technology can fail because it's not adopted by the users. So it's even much more about the social structures than the technology itself. There's even a very interesting example about the QWERTY keyboard which is still used, and we should not use it anymore. And then he goes and sees, okay, so I'm looking at the entire enterprise. There are different layers. There's code, and there are the organizational structures. There are different assets. Where am I accumulating technical debt? And we can see that we can talk about entropy at the organizational level, because that's the place where we lose track of many things. He's getting back to one of the very interesting contributors about technical debt, Adam Tomhill. So if you weren't aware about him, he's a great leader in the space. And he explains that legacy code is something that people look at, and it's not my code, and this is why they call it legacy code. You see the impact? So it's not about the fact it's poorly written. It's not about complexity. It's not about technical debt in a technical kind of definition. It's because people don't own that code. It's not their code. And this is why people call legacy code. So legacy code is the place where I don't want to be as a developer because it's not developed by me, and I don't care. It's a very interesting insight. Another insight comes from Ward, who said, he in a sense created the metaphor of technical debt. And he said it was never about bad quality. So this is very interesting, because Bob observes when he's discussing with the team, whenever there is something that they didn't have time to write it well or things like this, or they didn't know how to do it, they say technical debt. But that's bad design. It's very different. And we should count it in a different way. Uncle Bob also emphasizes this and says, unfortunately, there is another situation that is sometimes called technical debt, but that is neither reasoned nor wise. So technical debt is not a mess, right? So lots of attributes about technical debt, and Bob is going to have a definition about technical debt soon. Another insight for Bob is that technical debt cannot be achieved only from tools from continuous integration and continuous deploy. Why? Because technical debt is about the future. It's not about what we have right now. That's mostly bad quality code, things done not right, but we can count it as technical debt, but that's not why technical debt metaphor was invented for. Very important. And then he finds that when he's discussed with his team, that his team has lost responsibility over the quality. What does it mean? He's doing workshops, and he's starting workshops to teach people how to do test-driven development. He's doing the workshops, and his developers are asked, who is responsible with the quality on this product? And everyone is raising their hand. I am. They start learning test-driven development. They do that together. They love it. After 2 days of workshop, everyone is saying, wow, this is so cool. Help us negotiate with the management so that we do technical debt. Or help us negotiate with my customer to do technical debt. What is the insight from here? The team lost the responsibility about their quality. When you ask your CFO to do test-driven development, you give the responsibility for the CFO to the CFO. You've lost it. There are things we are responsible of, and we shouldn't ask other people if we do it. If you trust it, you do it. So this is very important. I know test-driven development, it's kind of a complex story, and it can have impact in technical debt, but it's a very interesting tool still. The debate is not necessary for this space. I can answer questions if needed. And now visibility over technical debt. This is how Bob is doing it. So whenever the team, this is a Confluence page, and whenever the team doesn't manage to do something properly because they rush to finish something and they are aware they are taking some shortcuts, they declare their technical debt themselves. And they put it in buckets. Whenever they discover something, like there is a new vulnerability they weren't aware of, to not forget it, they put it in the same bucket. When they discover that they didn't address well a use case, and now they need to evolve the system because I know they learned the use case was not well defined, and they learned from the users. The story doesn't matter. They put it in buckets. The idea behind it is that developers are doing it, and there's continuous visibility. This is how, in fact, Bob is seeing all the things that the team in his entire department, everything they see as technical debt. It's much more than sonar. It's much more than static code analysis. These are things that people think are debt, and they are responsible for, and they declare it, and Bob will ensure that they also have the space to resolve it timely. Another topic for Bob, there's no one in this industry that can define what good means. What does it mean in a digital product to be good in infrastructure and DevOps? What does it mean to be good in security? So Bob developed and uses maturity models, which is a very exhausted term. They are still models, but they have nothing to do with CMMI and this kind of models, where he puts on a paper, he says, good for us in security means this, almost good means this, insufficient means this, and very good means this. And infrastructure DevOps the same, in governance, in skills, in engineering practices. And he's following on this, and he can define, we can stay in almost good forever because that's an area where we don't want to invest, or we should be in good because that's very important. So he's having continuous visibility over all the dimensions that matter in his product. This is very important. If not, technical debt management is not really systemic. And then he gets inspired from a French amiral, Loic Finaz, who says, we never choose take solutions from a great list of options. We always have 2-3 bad solutions we need to apply, and it's temporary, and we need to choose from these 2-3 bad solutions, and that's it. That's how this is business as usual. And this is very important for Bob because he feels like he's never choosing from an ideal list of options. So in a sense, when he's taking solutions, it's always something temporary, and he shouldn't lose track of these decisions so that we understand why we've done some stuff and what was considered good as next step when we review these decisions. This is very important. If not, when a new CTO will come, it will just say it's a mess. He's wrapping all this together. He thinks of, Bob is always had this in mind. What can I leave for my successor? So he's looking at a list. This is his definition of done. Bob says, when I'm going to leave, it's in average 4 years, I want to leave this behind. A catalog of data, real-time updated architecture, lots of stuff. And visibility in key areas, including maturity models, technical debt, and so forth. This is his definition of done. So in a sense, what we do around technical debt needs to be visible, and it's part of the legacy when we transfer this to others. It's very important. Now, we cannot talk about technical debt enterprise architecture without discussing about business scaling machine. The idea of business scaling machine was achieving a state where you can increase operations dramatically without increasing the costs of running it in the same proportions. In order to do that, you don't achieve that by mistake. You need architecture work. So whenever Bob missed something like a fitness function, he felt like all the decisions taken there, now he needs to get back to them and rebuild it. There are these fitness functions that we can look at them, all of them we can, but the list is big enough. I cannot put them on a slide. And we can say, for us, for my business scaling machine, I need monitorability, I need resilience, I need performance. You know, DORA requirements will come applying 2025. Everyone is going to talk about business resilience, business continuity. That's a very strong requirement. So you need to include all this and say, when I have technical debt, it's all included. So Bob, in a sense, has a very inclusive definition of technical debt. He puts everything in it, the entire list of wishes, things that he feels like are inadequate compared to the new use cases that he needs to address. All that it's in the bucket of the technical debt. And he's wrapping it up all together into these highlights. This is what Bob learned, and these are the takeaways for you. Technical debt is no longer just about the code. 10 years ago, there was a shift in the industry. We moved for coders writing code to data processors. You need to know where data is. You need to know what's processing that data. You cannot treat the data in the same way. You have different data sensitivities. If you treat them in the same way, it's already most probably illegal in Europe, at least. So we need to look from the information system perspective and enterprise architecture. We cannot just look at the coded product. It's the entire system. Now, not everything is critical. What's critical? Those areas where we have most of the changes. Inspired from the book with the X-rays, he's applying this at the entire level. What are the areas where we move a lot? Technical debt is more useful when we talk about the future. We can also look at things that we've done bad quality, but that's not technical debt. We can include it to not lose track of it. But we should not encourage our developers to do bad quality. We should do technical debt right, like with good quality. It's not just about technical debt, it's also organizational debt, and they are tightly related together. We shouldn't use technical debt as an excuse. That's one of the things that harms a lot discussions about technical debt. Well, we cannot do it because it's technical debt. It cannot stop there. Technical debt accumulates. Debt accumulates. It's going to be just more if we don't take care of it. And it's one of the most interesting opportunities to talk with business because they relate to technical debt. They understand that. It's an interesting metaphor, maybe not the best one, but they connect. And also it's very popular. So executive officers talk about technical debt. Financial officers talk about technical debt. It happens. So it's an interesting topic, much more relevant than talking about containers or, I don't know, other stuff. So we can accidentally delegate responsibilities to other people. There are things we shouldn't ask other people to do it, to vote on it. It's like you go to someone who's building cars and you say, build a car without the safety belt. It's illegal. No one is going to do that. But in products and in technology, that's kind of rough. We don't have that safety belt clearly stated, except with the new regulation that we have right now. And it's going to be just more and more regulation. Total cost of ownership, it's an important concept, and they are tightly related with technical debt. And we should track these decisions into decision record, and it's all part of the CTO legacy. This is what Bob wanted to share with you. And let's go to the Q&A. Thank you, Matthias. What is the definition of enterprise architecture? And if this includes software as a service, tools used by the entire business, is this even the CTO responsibility? It's a great question. In fact, there are two questions. I'm going to talk about CTO responsibility first. So most of the companies don't have a CTO. They don't have a CTO and the CIOs and the CIO, or the CTO for the product and then the CTO for the internal stuff. And I don't even recommend that. So what happens when things go wrong? Like you have your CRM and you have the exact case that we had here, and we have data from the product and they don't connect. They don't work together. We are going to talk to the CTO and ask him why. Can you solve this? Can you do it? And usually is the CTO responsible for that. Second, when you do a technical due diligence, the auditor is going to talk with the CTO and is going to ask, okay, where is the data stored? What are the modules? Looking at all these aspects, and is the CTO answering? And if things are not properly done there, it's CTO's accountability. So by far. So I don't know if I click on, it's not yet answered. Now I'm getting back to what is the definition of enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture starts from business. It ends up in the lowest levels of technical corners. So it starts with what are the systems we have? How do they connect? What are the main use cases? What are the processes in the company? For example, I don't know, procurement or from leads to opportunity. That's a process, from leads to opportunity. What happens from lead to opportunity? What are the steps? What are the tools? What are the roles? All that is enterprise architecture, in a sense, part of that. And of course, it requires tools, it requires people, roles, and some other stuff. And that's enterprise architecture. And in a sense, this is very interesting to distinguish on what are the most important skills you as a CTO should focus on. For example, if you look at your value chain, you look at your industry, and you say, in my industry, there's this value chain, and with technology that we build, we kind of replace this step in the value chain with the technology that we build. And this is our competitive advantage. This is our strategy. So the technology helps the strategy. So it requires some skills from the CTO. If you cannot find a way how the technology helps in the value chain, there is an important chance you are looking at the technology helps in doing cheaper or faster only, which is what we call operational efficiency. The skills required for the CTO are very different. So you need to have a holistic approach, and enterprise architecture is one of the most interesting body of knowledge that helps you to do that. So I hope it helps. I can also leave on Slack some books in enterprise architecture if you are interested. Lots of interesting references that can help you dive in. I hope it helps, Thomas. Is there a maturity model resource you can recommend? We've developed our own maturity models. They are available on our site. You can connect there, but you can build your own. How we did that? Why we did that? That's the most important aspect of it. Because when we were launching a team, we needed to calibrate with those who buy services from us. And we had different definitions of what does it mean good in terms of, I don't know, infrastructure DevOps, in terms of security. And that's very harmful. So in a sense, we needed to do some workshops and say, look, for us, good means this. Is it the same for you? Do we miss something? And they said, no, that's fine. We didn't even have a definition before it. Actually, most of the CTOs we worked with, at the beginning, they didn't have a definition of what good means. That's very hard. So we have that, and you can find that on pentalog.com. If you connect, there is a dashboard module, and you can explore that. But you can build yourself. It's not very hard to build one. But you need a definition. If not, you are going to take decisions are harder. There's lots of dogma when we take decisions. And with pleasure, I can share that in a session. We can connect. I can make you a tour. We didn't manage to make them open source for various reasons, mostly legal aspects. I really wanted to, but it's not at the moment. Okay, I hope it helps, Adam. What is the best approach to calculate the TCO? The best approach? Well, again, there are some articles and some resources here. When I talked about the TCO, there are some links. You're going to get the slides. And in these links, you have a definition of TCO and how to calculate it. I try to go to it. Up. Where is it? Yeah, you have them here. You can start. I will put them already here. How can I do that? In the chat. Up. I hope they help you. They are pretty, I think, well explained because, yeah, you can find them there. I hope it helps. Now I'm getting back to the Q&A module. How do I get back? Okay, I'm back. I could. Sorry for spelling it. I hope you got your answer.
Yeah, thank you. I will read through it, and if not, I will connect to you.
Yes. I'm reachable. Like, I cannot answer immediately, but with pleasure. And I'm going to be in the temporary in the Slack channel. Haya here added me there, so we can also Bye, Chris. Thanks for staying with us. Anonymous. How to manage technical debt in different sized organizations. If you take the definition of Bob, it can apply to a very small team and to a very big team. Now, we know that the bigger it gets, the bigger entropy it gets. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with the things like software entropy. So in a sense, we start from a very ordered structure, and in time, we lose that order. It's chaotic. We have the feeling of. There is a great author, the inventor of Wolfram Alpha, who talks about entropy in general, and he believes that entropy is not a problem as things really need to be like this complex. It's just that we are limited in perception and we lose track of changes, but is not a mandatory symptom. If you are careful in having a what we call architecture decision record, if you, when you take the biggest decisions, try to look at it from state-of-the-art architecture, and you say, I look at alternatives, I'm going to address only these stories or use cases. You look at pros and cons, you do most of the good work so that things are in the right order. And when things evolve, get back to these decisions and see how that they are impacted. If you do this work, things will be okay. If you're only looking at the software, you are going to have a mess in time. If you only look at your piece of code, and it's going to be out of control. So you cannot look only at your code. If you look at what the tools that are here or similar, you have Sonar in place, all these developers can handle everything regarding code themselves. Everything else is architecture and organizational. That's the area where you should focus. These developers can do without you. And one last thing, and I think it's worth mentioning, it's all about decision making. It's all about decision making. There is I also have an episode about decision making. It's pretty similar in terms of structure and what you get in it. But if you ensure that people know what are decisions and take time when you say if you're not in a rush, things will go just fine. What does it mean properly? When you take a decision, you ensure everyone is aware of it. A decision is a decision. Even newcomers. Decision expire. They're not there forever. There are lots of small things to do, and it's related to decision making. There is a new book, Architecture Elevator. Very interesting. If you look at Architecture Elevator, what does it say? Decisions. The author says, I look at teams, I ask them how they take decisions. If they present me a diagram of data and I don't see why they achieve that, what they try to solve, that's not architecture. That's not. So it's always about decision. Visibility of these challenges, trace the decisions and take them properly. And that will work. It doesn't matter if you are 100 or 10. There is a law, however, that the bigger it gets as an organization, the more descriptive you need to be. So when you are at 10, you have lighter decisions, like you have less attributes. When you are 1,000, the process of change management is a bit more complex. You need to be, it's more descriptive and you need to go to some stage gates. So that's different, because we talk about management of technical debt. So how you tackle with that, how you handle it. So in a sense, when you take decisions, how do you implement that decision? That's where things get, but not the essence of the decision. I hope it helped. How do you draw the line between cheap, short-term fixes and expensive, long-term solutions for technical debt challenges? Well, it's a question, and it's a frequent question, Ben, but it's not always relevant. If we say technical debt, it's about the future, you cannot foresee all the future possibilities, so you just try to solve the use cases that you envisage. In terms of how many use cases you manage to cover at the beginning, a key question here is what is reasonable for you. So you say the key features are this, and I think we might go there or there, and that's defined by your costs approach. What can you afford? If you are 10 people, you afford less things than if you are 1,000, right? And bigger companies can afford more, even if sometimes they do less than smaller companies. You need to know what's reasonable for you. You need to know in what league you play. And when you accept in what league you play, you know what's actionable for you. And sometimes you say, you know what? We are not going to develop that. We are going to low-code these aspects. And we know we are going to replace them in 2 years. And that's fine. And we focus with our code and best talent there where there is experience with the users. Everything else, we do it cheap. We do it with low code. But these products are very mature and they work. And you can take decisions like this. For example, for the products development in my case, most of the internal automation was done with low code. Very powerful platforms. You have Power Platform. You have Salesforce that has low code capabilities. You have ServiceNow. Very powerful. And that can cover most of the. So, and why we did that is to get the financial energy to focus on something which is more interesting for external users, has more business value for us. And this is interesting. Why? Because when you take decisions, you choose between speed, flexibility, and price. So you can say, I do everything myself. I do it best state, whatever. Okay, that's fine. You're going to get lots of flexibility, but it's going to be harder and more expensive. For example, those who do the data centers themselves, those who do infrastructure as a service as their favorite solution instead of container as a service or even other as a service, managed services. With a managed service like, I don't know, an Azure Search, you win in speed. With your Elasticsearch deployed by you, you win in flexibility. But you have to have the means to do that. So to wrap up the question, in what league you'll play, so that is reasonable. Because when you have to do encryption at rest with an Elasticsearch, that's going to be very expensive if you do it yourself. I'll give an example. So you put the bar wherever you want. But I think the debate is speed versus flexibility. And now you say, I need to do it right. Whatever I'm doing it. I'm doing it very flexible or I'm doing it very fast. You need to do it right. Bye, Florian. Thanks for your patience. So it's not, there shouldn't be cheap in terms of doing right. This is very important. If you cannot do it right, you can also look at things. Maybe you don't have the talent to do that. And you also look at the tools that can enable your talent to achieve their goals. And there are so many options out there. Honestly, it's amazing. You have digital experience platforms. You have data lake house options today. You have ML studios out of the box. You have data platforms. You have, wow. I think literally, if you don't have the talent, go to platforms and do with the people you have, achieve your goals. I hope it helps. Ben.
Cornelio, I don't know if you covered it, but how would a CTO coming from here, what would be their next steps, like making it real and practical? What would you advise them to do?
I think, if you still see my screen, I've lost my cursor. One of the things that I do is visibility over technical debt. I do something like this. Talk to the teams, get a definition of technical debt, your definition. It doesn't need to be Bob's definition. Make it your own. It can be your own. You say, I remove this part, I add my own. That's fine. Nobody knows what technical debt means. So you can take it as, you can put it in your context. And then make it visible. Talk to your team members and say, let's make it visible. And if important information comes from tools, put it in the same place. But if not, most of the technical debt is going to be off the radar of people, not on the radar of some static code analysis, unfortunately, which are still very useful. These two things, your definition and then make it visible.
Thank you. So thank you, Cornelio, for joining us. Thank you for sharing this with us. It's very a lot of research went into this, and thank you everyone for coming. There will be a survey going out, so you can fill that in. And also, Cornelio will be sharing the slides on Slack, and he'll also be available for follow-up questions. So you have a question, you can either email him privately or you can ask in public, and other people can benefit from his answer to your question. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. We will, by the way, just heads up, tomorrow morning we're releasing a cool podcast. So keep a lookout for that about autonomous teams. Anyways, thank you so much, Cornelio, and everyone else have a very good evening. You too have a good evening, but everyone should have a good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for your time.